So, the search for a new manager at Manchester United begins all over again. For now, we know that we've got Darren Fletcher, but that is only for the short term, I would assume. Long term, Manchester United needs someone different, and we need to get ahead of the game. United need to be on the front foot with this decision. Now, realistically, there's about 100 different managers that we need to discuss, but we need to start somewhere. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to start somewhere. So we're going to start off with a fella called Xavi. Now, you've probably heard of him before because he's one of the best midfielders to ever play the beautiful game, before then eventually venturing into his career as a manager. His last job was at Barcelona, where he was somewhat successful in very difficult circumstances. The question is, what was his philosophy at Barcelona all about? Well, it was about the 4 Ps. P number 1, position. Xavi put a big focus on his Barcelona side, occupying key parts of the pitch at all times. So yes, players were allowed to rotate, but they were always occupying certain parts of the pitch. And they did so using what I would describe a bit of a 2-3-2-3 shape on the ball. So that would look like 2 centre-backs, then 2 full-backs moving further forward, a solo pivot in midfield, 2 midfielders ahead of them, and then 2 wide players. And what Xavi was very keen on was making the pitch as big as possible when Barcelona had the ball. So his players would spread out massively. The second Barcelona got the ball, the team would split wider to create these bigger gaps. But the gaps between the Barcelona players, interestingly, were always pretty similar. So the gap from the pivot to the central midfielder was similar to the gap between the central midfielder and the fullback. And if we were to sort of draw some lines between some of these players, you can see quite quickly, you know, where triangles are going to form. There are going to be triangles all over the pitch. This was something that Xavi put a big focus on. The second P is possession. Xavi wanted his side to control the ball, and that will not come as a shock to anyone when you think about what Xavi was as a footballer and the Barcelona side that he played in. He actually said in an interview, in an ideal world, he would have 100% possession, with the idea being if you've got the ball, the opposition can't hurt you, right? So that is something that Xavi would want to bring to Manchester United. Now, you guys can debate in the comments down below whether that suits the club's philosophy or not. Let me know what you think. But it is definitely something that Xavi would put a big focus on. Manchester United becoming a side that keeps the ball constantly. Now, the third P was perception, which is very vague. What does that actually mean, and how does that make any sense? Well, Xavi's perception was always, as we've said, for Barcelona to occupy all the parts of the pitch, to make the pitch as big as possible, and then to keep possession. But his perception on how the game should be played was to always find the free man. That is what Xavi always wanted to do. He wanted his players to roam into different parts of the pitch to be able to overload the opposition, with the idea being always getting a player free on the ball. His thinking basically was, if you use your goalkeeper as well in the build-up, you have 11 players on the ball. The opposition can only defend with 10, so always you should be able to find a free man somewhere. That was something that he put a big focus on. And Xavi wanted to play quite a fast football with Barcelona. It wasn't possession for the sake of it, despite wanting to dominate the ball. He wanted to move the ball forward quickly. It was a lot of counter movements to find these free players. So if you want to find the free player out on the wing here, you've perhaps got to make a run in behind to find that player. It was quite a vertical brand of football, at times likened to what Ten Hag tried to do at United, and it's not too dissimilar, wanting to control the ball but wanting to move it quickly, players roaming into different positions and expressing themselves. That's what Xavi put a big focus on. The fourth P is pressure. Xavi wants his side to press high to win the ball back, and that sort of ties back in with his possession idea. He wants his team to have the ball, so when they don't have it, when they lose possession, he quickly wants his team to apply pressure to make sure that they get the ball back. And one of the reasons why Xavi was so keen to use this was because at times with Barcelona, he did struggle to get his team to break down a low block. Sometimes it can be difficult to find a way through so many compact players, but actually one of the most effective ways to attack is to lose the ball. Because as you lose the ball, the opposition start to open up a little bit and think they can play forward. If you then quickly apply pressure to win possession back, that's when you can then find bigger gaps in the opposition's defence. So these were some of the ideas that Xavi really put a focus on with Barcelona, and I'm pretty confident he would look to bring to Manchester United. Of course, it goes much more in depth than this, so let me know what you think in the comments down below, and would you like to hear more about Xavi's football? So next up, Nagelsmann, currently in charge of the German national side, but in the summer there is a chance he was without a job and looking for a new project. So the question is, what is Nagelsmann's idea of football? Where it's very adaptable, very flexible. Nagelsmann doesn't have one fixed formation. Throughout his career at different clubs and now with the national team, he has looked to use so many different shapes. He has always been a manager willing to adapt. He can play in a back three, he can play in a back four, it might be a double pivot in midfield, it might be a singular pivot in midfield. Nagelsmann is not fixed to one idea. He likes the idea of adapting depending on what your opposition are doing. So if the opposition are weak out wide, Nagelsmann will make a conscious effort to attack those wide zones. He doesn't have one fixed idea. Week to week, he is tinkering, trying to find a way to best exploit the opposition. Now, a big part of this involves stretching. What Nagelsmann likes to do is try and stretch the opposition. Now, sometimes that will mean playing with a lot of width. For example, moving your wingers really high and wide to try and draw the opposition out wide. But it doesn't always have to be that. Nagelsmann's idea isn't purely based on width. In fact, we'll see later, it's actually quite the opposite. What Nagelsmann likes to do instead is try and attach his players to opposition players so that then you can manipulate them to create space for someone else. Sounds weird. What does that even actually mean? Am I just waffling? Sort of, but not really. What Nagelsmann likes to do is, let's for example, push one of these players forward. He likes to push a player forward quite early into the final third, with the idea that this player can now attach himself to this defender. By attaching yourself to this defender, what you now do is sort of dictate where he's going to go, because he is now marking you. He is responsible for following you. So if I'm this player, I can now choose where he's going to go, which is how I can stretch the opposition and create space for other players. For example, if I drop deep towards the ball and draw this player with me, well, now I've opened up a bigger space for a different player to move into here. And this is Nagelsmann's idea: to pin yourself, to attach yourself to opposition players, to stretch them, to move them out of position, to then create and attack the space in behind. It can also work out wide. For example, he might want a player to lock themselves onto this player, and then he's going to drag them out of the way, move them over here, and now that creates space for someone else to move into. So it's all about almost attaching to defenders and then stretching them out of position, again based on the different structures that you face from the other team. Now, the next idea that I want to discuss is minimum width. This is something that Nagelsmann puts a big focus on, but what does it actually mean? Well, it means playing with the ball in possession, but not stretching the pitch super wide. So yes, he wants to stretch individuals, he wants to move individuals out of position, but he's not necessarily one of these managers who likes to make the pitch as big as you physically can. We saw Xavi earlier on the ball, wanted to stretch his players and make the pitch as big as possible. Nagelsmann likes minimum width. He likes his wide players actually slightly narrower. Now, of course, occasionally one will pop up out wide, but typically speaking, he likes his team to play quite narrow. And the reason why he likes to do this is because it gets a lot of your players, your technical attacking players, really close together. In these positions here, lots of players for your team that are close to each other with the ability now to combine. This was something that Nagelsmann would always look for, you know, throughout his career really as a manager so far. Players close together and third man combinations. So that might be, you know, passing a ball into the striker to draw pressure and then popping the ball off backwards. Having these players always nice and close to each other, so you always have that passing option. It's a big emphasis on technical play, on being sharp, on being aware of your surroundings, and then sort of producing that technical quality to find each other. The other benefit of minimum width, and this is one of the main reasons why Nagelsmann uses it, is for the defensive side of the game. Because when you lose the ball, if all your players are really narrow, really tight and compact, it means it's quite difficult for the opposition to play out from the back, because all your players are there just ready to jump and apply pressure. Now, this brings us quite nicely to the next part of Nagelsmann's coaching, and that is pressing. Nagelsmann does not want the opposition to have too much time on the ball, and in particular, he does not want the opposition to have the ball in the middle of the pitch. So that's why he uses minimum width, so his players can quickly counter press and get the ball. But he also applies a similar idea in more settled phases of possession, when the opposition are playing out from the back. Nagelsmann will really crowd the centre of the pitch. He will congest the middle so the opposition can't play through, and what he really wants his team to do is to bend their runs towards the ball in the hope of forcing the opposition wide one way. So as this player curves his run, it forces the centre-back to play to the right-hand side. The midfielder can do the same on the opposition midfielder, and what happens when you force the opposition wide is this touchline over here now basically becomes one of your defenders. See, if you play here, this player on the ball has a 360-degree angle that they can use. The second you're over here, you are reduced to a 180-degree angle, because the touchline is basically a defender. What do we always say? The touchline is the best defender in football. So this is what Nagelsmann likes to do. He likes to trap teams wide and then press really high to once again win the ball back. It's a very aggressive, it's a very intense, and it's a very forward-thinking style that you get with Nagelsmann. Next up, we've got Glasner, currently the manager of Crystal Palace and heavily linked with a move to Manchester United. His first idea is speed. Glasner is another manager that wants his team to play very quickly with speed to hurt the opposition. But his way of doing this is very different to the last two managers. What Glasner will often do is want to play with speed, but to play with speed you need space. To create space you need to move the opposition defenders. But Glasner, particularly at Crystal Palace, has done this in a slightly different way. Rather than creating space by dominating the ball, he has often actually asked his Crystal Palace side to sit just a little bit deeper, to get men behind the ball and be compact and be hard to beat. Don't know why I've highlighted all of these. These players are moving by themselves, but he likes to get his players behind the ball. And the reason why he likes to do this is because it draws the opposition forward. It allows the opposition to attack, it allows the opposition to have possession, but it does mean as the opposition have possession, they push all these players up the pitch, and when they do that, if they lose the ball, you can now play quickly because there's now these big spaces which you can exploit. This is how Glasner likes his teams to play quickly. So he creates space by drawing pressure onto you, by not having the ball almost, then you win possession back and you quickly play into those zones to quickly penetrate through the opposition. The next key part of Glasner's coaching model is flexibility. Since moving to Crystal Palace, he has almost exclusively played in a 3-4-3 formation, and I think in English football that gives him almost a bit of a bad reputation. People assume he is tied to this formation and cannot play in any other way, but that's simply not true. Earlier in his career, particularly in Germany, for example with Wolfsburg or Freiburg, we've seen him using different shapes. We've seen him defending with a back four, so one of these wide players, rather than being a wing back, is now outright a fullback. You drop yourself into this position, and now you can see, whilst the lines are a bit skewed, it's now a 4-4-2 shape. So Glasner is someone that can change and can move into different shapes. He can also ask his team to play in a different style, and that's probably the more important thing. For example, at Freiburg, he was a manager who wanted his team to press really high up the pitch. The PPDA was incredibly low, which meant the opposition were able to complete very few passes before his side, Glasner's side, would win the ball because they were pressing so high. Yet at Crystal Palace, it's almost the opposite. The PPDA is a very high number, which means the opposition are able to complete a lot of passes because Crystal Palace play very deep. And that is a sign for me that Glasner is willing to adapt and change depending on the players at his disposal. The final thing that Glasner likes is diagonal play. Now, you might initially wonder what this is. It's the way that you position yourself to receive the ball to play a different type of pass, a diagonal pass. Now, normally when we think about diagonal pass, we think about a big long ball over the top from left to right. But it's not about that. It's about short, sharp diagonal passes in the middle of the pitch. And the key here is that these passes are diagonal as opposed to vertical. In modern football, when we're talking about it, we put a big focus on vertical play, playing through the lines. You will hear that term all the time. And that's the idea of a player here finding this player here with a straight vertical pass through the lines. The problem is when you receive a ball like that, your back is to goal. Your body is not particularly open. There's only one way you can go back. However, when we play diagonally, when Glasner's side plays diagonally, it's a very different way in which you receive the ball. As you receive that ball, your body is much more open. So you have the ability to go back the way you came, or you have the ability now to move forward. And this again sort of plays into that idea of speed. Look at this pass map from Adam Wharton. Very diagonal, short in the middle of the pitch. And that increases the speed of play because you're able to quickly pop the ball off fast. So Glasner is very different to the managers that we've looked at so far. But sort of what he wants to achieve is quite similar. He wants quick play, he wants his team to move forward quickly, he wants to cause problems. He just goes about achieving it in a very, very different way. Now, the final manager that I want to talk about is Kieran McKenna, formerly an assistant coach at Manchester United and now managing Ipswich Town in the Championship as they push for promotion once again. One of McKenna's big ideas is space. It's a bit of a buzzword today. It seems like all managers like to find space on a football pitch, which makes a lot of sense. McKenna's way of finding space and creating space and attacking space, though, is again a little bit different to what we've discussed so far. McKenna is a manager who likes to entice the opposition out of position to attack space, but not by defending, but by being patient on the ball. McKenna encourages his side to play the ball out from the back, to play short passes in the first phase. Yes, they can go long, which I think is important to be able to mix it up, but McKenna will ask his side to play deep, to play patient in the first phase. And the reason why he wants to do this is to draw the opposition out. If you are playing the ball short over here, eventually most teams, not all teams, most teams are going to come and apply some pressure because they don't want you to have the ball. They're going to bring players over to that side of the pitch. Defensively, they will move as a cohesive unit over to that side. And the reason why McKenna's doing this is because by playing it short, by enticing the opposition over here, you're actually creating a massive space on the far side of the pitch. So this is about creating space by drawing pressure and then finding that space. That's what McKenna likes to do. Something else that is incredibly important to McKenna is technical details. And this is where I would almost describe McKenna as more of a coach at times rather than a manager. McKenna is a coach who is meticulous with his work on the training ground, with his research, with his watching of footage, with his analysis. And what he wants to do is make individuals better. He wants to coach players, he wants to improve them. So he doesn't necessarily need a collection of ready, complete stars. He is more than happy to take young players or simply players that are willing to learn and help them focus on their details, because he wants to make all of his players individually better footballers. So for McKenna, it's not as much of a focus on a fixed, rigid structure that you have to play within. It's more about individually being a better footballer with more tools to try and solve more problems. And the reason why he wants to do this is because he does, in moments, want his team to be able to play 1 versus 1 in defensive situations, but also in attacking situations. And to do that, you have to have the tools as a player to solve problems. And that's something that McKenna really encourages and works on. And that's why for his side, you will see quick 1 versus 1 football, often isolating a fullback with a winger and looking and asking these players to express themselves and attack that player. And it only works because he coaches them. Tied in with all of this is a real intensity. McKenna is an intense coach who, as we said, is meticulous with the details, but the way that his teams play is a very physical, intense way. He wants his team to physically impose themselves on the opposition by pressing, by chasing, by battling for loose duels, but also by on the ball playing in a very quick manner. McKenna likes his team to have a lot of possession, but not for the sake of it. He wants his team to move the ball forward very quickly. Again, creating that space and quickly attacking that space. He will task his side always with finding the most direct route to goal. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean a long ball, but it means moving the ball quickly along the floor to try and create spaces, to try and open spaces, to try and attack spaces, and ultimately exploit the opposition. That's something that he looks for constantly. But then off the ball, it's just as intense. We saw him come to the Premier League with a very weak Ipswich side, but still he was a manager that wanted to press. We saw it against Manchester United. He asked his Ipswich side to press high. It's intense, it's aggressive. He wants his team pressing super high up the pitch to basically suffocate the opposition. All of this sort of ties in for McKenna wanting dominance. He wants that football and he will do anything for his side to get it. So on the ball, that means keeping possession, of course, where possible and knocking the ball around the back. His Ipswich sides have always had a very good amount of possession in the Championship, so he wants his team to keep the ball. But again, it's that idea that when you lose the ball, defensively you've got to be compact, you've got to be rigid, but you've also got to be intense, and you've got to try and fight to get the ball back. That's something that McKenna will always look for, no matter where he is. And I think that's really his brand of football. It's intense, it's aggressive, but it's also really focused on technical individuals really excelling in their environment. So yes, there you have it. 4 different managers / head coaches, whatever they are these days, that Manchester United could be considering for the summer. It won't happen now. We know we're likely to get an interim in the short term, but in the summer, I would imagine we will be looking for a new long-term permanent manager. And these are 4 of the guys that we could look at. And hopefully now you have a better idea of how they want to play. Not just their shape, not just their formation, but their idea, how they want football to be played, their intentions that they would bring, almost their personality with the way that their team plays, their personality reflected in their team. Hopefully now you've got a better idea of that. What I now need from you guys, though, is a little bit of help, and for you guys to lead the way a little bit, because there are so many managers that we need to talk about in so much depth that I need your help knowing where to start. Do you want me to start with a video on one of these 4, more in depth, focusing on their ideas? Or do you want me to look at some different managers? If so, who? Maybe just let me know your list of priority order. Let me know in the comments down below, because it's an overwhelming time for all of us Manchester United fans, but hopefully together we can sort of get through it with some sort of sense and knowledge. That is basically the plan. That's what I'm going to be doing on the channel. If that's what you want to see, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and get your notifications on. But apart from that, we're now finished for today. So thank you guys very much for watching this video. I hope you have enjoyed it. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.